Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live inside the Beltway on this Thursday. I'll be on special report tonight on the panel with Brett Baer talking about the House finally being called for the Republicans, Mitch McConnell being returned to lead the GOP Senate. One of his colleagues, Jim Lankford, just won a thunderous re-election for another 6 years. I'm not sure if that's a sentence or a big win. I know you want to serve the people of Oklahoma. Welcome back, Senator Lankford. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Good morning. Yeah, by the way, it's a bit of a both. It's a victory and a Senate as well. So,
well, I'm very glad for you. I was at a National Republican Senatorial Committee event probably a year and a half ago with you and your wonderful wife and with Rick Scott and everyone. You know, Republican senators may have disagreements, but they don't have fisticuffs. I tried to explain that in the first hour. I'd like you to expand on that. Any partnership, and I've run two law firms with, more than 20 partners, and they disagree, and then they get down, they have a vote in the end, you go along with what the vote is. Is that the way the Senate Republican caucus will work?
That is the way that it works, actually. There's always frustration. We obviously underperformed what we thought we would during the elections last week. So there's a need for a very serious conversation about where we're going, how we're communicating the issues, what are the key things that we're actually trying to be able to promote and put out there. Those are hard conversations that need to have, and we spent hours Monday and Tuesday going through some very frank conversations on that, as we should.
Well, and when partners in law firms do that every single year, especially around points time, compensation time, people get hot, they say things, and then after a week or so, you just go on with work. Is that what you'll settle back into?
I'm not sure that we're going to settle back into work as usual. There's a big push to make sure we're more strategic, more focused on those key issues. And so we're trying to put some structural things in place to be able to make sure more voices are heard, more people are actually engaged in the decision process. So there were some things that changed, I believe, but those are structural changes that needed to happen.
Well, that happens in firms too. I mean, that changed.
Sure does.
Now, are you on the record as whether or not you were a McConnell or a Scott vote?
I have not put that out. Quite frankly, I've said I'm working with both, and so I'm going to continue to be able to just stay quiet. Both of them know where I am on this, but I've got to be able to work with both on it. And the hard part about Rick Scott and Mitch McConnell running, and it was a lot of the conversation about the time period, how we're going to do elections. Those two folks that were actually having the quote-unquote election, they're also the two main folks that are trying to help Herschel Walker right now with the fundraising, the organization, and the structure. So the last thing we need as Republicans are the two key people that are trying to help us win Georgia spend the next 3 weeks actually running a leadership race against each other. At the end of the day, the conference looked at it and said, it is best for the race in Georgia. It is best for our conference. It's best to go ahead and decide this right now and to be able to get this settled rather than to have this stretch out for weeks, be a distraction to Georgia and the two key people that need to be most involved in Georgia not involved there.
And, Senator, again, I hearken back to my law firm experience and my corporate experience and my foundation experience. That's what happens. You have two very talented people. You got two divisions, 37-10 or something like that, 37-10-1. And, okay, there's a clearly majoritarian position. I hope the 10 go along and you try and address their concerns and you move forward. As a 50-50, assume for a moment Herschel wins. He was on yesterday. They got the turnout machine going. Brian Kemp is all in for him. So is Mitch McConnell. So is Rick Scott. Mike Pompeo said, just name the time and I'll be down there, Herschel. I am curious, what do you think his odds of winning are?
It's going to be close. We've obviously saw this in the runoff from 2 years ago with Kelly and David. We saw this in an extremely tight race. Literally, Georgia is a 50-50 state on this, and so it's going to be a matter of who actually turns out. His chances are as good as Raphael Warnock's chances are at this point, so both of them got to be able to turn people out. They've got to show up and understand there is a difference between a 50-50 Senate and a 51-49 Senate. If we have a 51-49 Senate, every one of the committees loses a Republican, and every one of those committees is no longer equal on it. They're now split, and so we lose a lot of those seats in the different committees. They gain a lot of subpoena power based on having the majority on each committee on it. So things do structurally change in the Senate. It definitely changes for our nominations because right now, if there is a nomination that comes out of the Biden White House, goes to the Senate, it's equally divided in a committee that it's harder to be able to get to the floor, so there's more negotiation in that process. That changes with a 51-49 Senate. So
it most certainly
does not look at this and say, hey, there's no difference in that. There is a huge difference in that if Herschel Walker wins Georgia.
Election day in Georgia is December the 6th. Early voting begins Monday, November 28th through Friday, December the 2nd. I will repeat that 1,000 times. Election day is December 6th. Voting begins Monday, November 28th through Friday, December 2nd. To all my listeners in Atlanta and Macon and throughout, and Athens and Savannah, get out there and get your vote counted once you can get early voting underway on Monday, the November 28th. Senator, which committees will you be the senior Republican on?
Well, it'd be on Homeland Security. Would be the one that would be most senior on this one. We're still waiting. Senator Rand Paul has seniority over me by a couple of years in that committee. He also has seniority in the committee dealing with health, education, labor, and pensions. So he has the opportunity to be able to pick which one of those he wants to be ranking member. He gets the first selection. If he chooses the health committee, health, education, labor, and pensions, I'll be the senior member in Homeland Security. So we'll wait and have his final selection there. But we move up the dais quite a bit in the Finance Committee dealing with tax, with trade, with all things Medicare, Medicaid, and trying to be able to resolve the long-term issues there to make those structurally sound. So there's several committees that I'll stay very engaged with.
Yeah, I spent all day yesterday reading American Renewal, which Paul Ryan has edited about the AEI's work on our finance system. And, the collapse of crypto is going to cause a lot of disruption, not the complete collapse of crypto, but SBF and SFX. What are you going to do about that? Is finance going to look into that, or is that banking?
That's mostly banking and commerce that would go through that, but finance has the piece that deals with the tax element on it, which has been one of the key elements of crypto is how do you actually manage the tax. This is an investment piece that when you cash it out and transition it into anything that becomes hard currency, there's a taxable event. So that is part of our task there with finance.
All right, now, Senator, I'm going to assume you can make Homeland Security because Rand Paul really wants to get at the CDC and find out what happened in this COVID thing. So I assume he's going to pick health services. No, he'll probably confuse me and do the other thing, but let's assume you get Homeland Security. I just think we absolutely have to focus on the Chinese Communist Party and their efforts to do espionage in the United States. Is that your writ at Homeland Security?
There are several major aspects on that. That is certainly one of them. Obviously, what's happening on the border is a significant event. Title 42 just going away. At this point, we're going to see another rush at the border with record numbers. FEMA and how we handle disasters. We seem to handle that in a fairly sloppy way in our preparation and our contracting and costing. But we also have the government workforce in that one as well. How we handle hiring and firing and management. What we're going to do with remote work. All of those things are also in that portfolio. So it's a pretty broad portfolio of issues that have to be covered. But we have to deal first and foremost with how we're protecting our nation from cyber attack. That's in the Homeland Security, how we're handling the border, how we're handling China, and even Chinese immigration as China deals with some of our territories, for instance, and moves people in mass numbers into some of those territories and is getting access to American citizenship through that. That needs to be addressed as well.
So, Senator, when we turn our attention to the end of the year, I would have supported the same-sex marriage bill. I don't know whether you did or not, but it's going to pass, and that clears one thing. You need a continuing resolution. I don't want one that goes much into next year because I want the Republican majority in the House to be an equal partner with Leader McConnell in the caucus and Chuck Schumer in his caucus. What is going to happen here? Is there going to be a CR, short CR, or a long CR?
Well, that is going to be the challenge right now. We've not heard. This is one of the frustrations that we have as a conference is that none of us have seen any of the appropriation bills. In fact, the final number for appropriations has not been set. Chuck Schumer has not brought a single appropriation bill. There's 12 of them. Not one of them has even come to committee this year, and he's trying to actually form an agreement behind the scenes where literally the Senate would never see it, even in committee, until it's time for final passage. So
just
if
say no, right?
Resolution happens until next year. That helps us with leverage significantly to be able to get things resolved. But if we see an omnibus, it's going to be something completely negotiated behind the scenes that none of us ever saw.
Does the omnibus take 60 votes?
The omnibus does take 60 votes. Yes, it does.
So they can't get away with it. I don't care if you shutter the government during Christmas. It's not the end of the world. I really don't think we should give in to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer when they've been rebuked by the public. And it's a rebuke. The House belongs to Republicans.
It does. It is a shift. Obviously, the American people have spoken. We have Republican numbers very strong across the country and lots of state House and state Senate races across the country as well. But obviously, the House has flipped. That's going to be a significant shift. We all remember 2011 and what happens when there was a Republican House, a Democrat Senate, and a Democrat president. It dramatically changed the negotiation process at that point.
So you're going to have one half of 1/3 and 50-50 if Herschel wins. Jim Langford, please keep coming back, Senator. I appreciate it every single time you show. And congratulations. Big, big win in Oklahoma. And that's a win for the Sooner State. Thank you, Senator Langford. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned.